Hey guys, today we are going to rank the Ace Attorney games from easiest to hardest. Well, actually we're just going to do them in chronological order. So we will start with the first game, and this is going to be an interesting list to make because I played some of these games when I was younger. Mostly the trilogy actually. I didn't really play anything else. So I know my experiences with those when I was like 11 years old, and I know my experiences with them as well now that I'm like 19. So it's going to be fun comparing those, but as for the rest of the games, they will be different because I either played them one time at this age, or I watched Let's Plays of them, which doesn't really count. And for the case of the Investigations duology, I played them through like my high school years, so yeah, it's going to be quite different. But with the first game, when I was 11, this was like one of the hardest games ever, dude. This would have been in this top tier. But the first game is really interesting because now it's a pretty easy game to play. And I know now I have that experience, I know how Ace Attorney games work, and I also have to consider I was 11 when I first played it, so obviously I wasn't really smart. Like, I was pretty dumb when I was 11 years old. So yeah, it's hard to say how difficult this game truly is. And now the first 4 cases feel like a cakewalk. But again, I wonder how that would be if this was the first time I played the game. I don't think it would be as easy, because I don't really know how Ace Attorney works if that's the case. Now with this list, I'm mostly taking into consideration penalties, so like how many times you like game over, how many mistakes you make in the trial, but I will consider navigation a little bit, because if you get stuck, that means the game is difficult. You know, you wouldn't want to get stuck, so I'm considering that a bit, but it's mostly the trials. And yeah, Ace Attorney 1 is just this weird game, where when I was a child, it was the most difficult thing ever. I remember getting stuck on Turnabout Goodbyes and Rise from the Ashes so many times. But the most recent time I played it, I made like 1 mistake on Turnabout Samurai and 1 mistake on Turnabout Goodbyes, and that was it. However, the reason why it's not in this bottom tier is Rise from the Ashes. Rise from the Ashes, that is a difficult case, and it's mostly for 1 segment. It's Angel Star's testimony. That is actually tough. But also there's the navigation portion, like navigating through the investigation. That's pretty tough as well, so I do think Ace Attorney 1 has to be an easy or normal. I might put in the normal just because if you're starting with this, you might be confused on how some of those contradictions in Ace Attorney work, right? So maybe normal. I think I might put it in normal for now. We'll see how the other games go. And oh, we got JFA coming up, and oh god, JFA, you need 200 IQ, man. JFA, ooh boy, JFA is tough. I think from case 2 onwards, you have a game that is quite difficult to get through. It really bumps up the challenge compared to the first game, and in some ways it's not really good challenge, I'll be honest. JFA has problems with its gameplay, and I went over those in my reviews. Most commonly, case 3 and case 4 are really challenging in these abstract ways. You get penalties for pressing, you gotta do double pressing, or you have to press statements like twice. Oh man, JFA, yeah, you need 200 IQ. I remember back in the day, Turnabout Big Top, that was the biggest offender, I think. Turnabout Big Top was insanely difficult. Farewell My Turnabout, not as difficult. Like, I don't think I game overed as much, but I remember it being quite a long process. I remember it taking me quite a while to get through some of the testimonies. So yeah, JFA, you need 200 IQ, man. Even the navigation, it's just tough. It's just tough. I'd be surprised if there were people who got through this game with like no game overs. That would surprise me. That would be very shocking. Like seriously, that's when you know a game is hard. If game overing is just the norm. And that is what JFA is, but there's actually a game that I think is harder, and this might be personal for me, but Trials and Tribulations is more difficult for me than JFA. And I say this with my experiences as an 11-year-old and my experiences in the present. So speaking for when I was an 11-year-old, I remember case 2 and onwards was just super difficult. Every case, constant game overs. I remember at one point I was counting game overs. I think with the Stolen Turnabout and Recipe for Turnabout, I had like 6 game overs each. And bro, Turnabout Beginnings, I don't even know. I will tell you guys this. Turnabout Beginnings is like the hardest case for me personally. In the entire series, that is the case that gives me the most trouble. Take this in, right? With my playthrough of these games, like 1 year ago, I game overed on Turnabout Beginnings 3 times. Take that in. I knew the general process of the case. I knew generally what was going to happen, but the contradictions were just too hard. I don't know what it is, but, well, actually I kind of do. I've been reviewing the case, so I do understand where my struggles come from. But yeah, that's just a case that's super hard for me. It's easily the hardest case for me in the series. And even Bridge to the Turnabout has some difficult moments. So all these cases, man, they just mess me up. It's probably a personal thing. I believe most people will find JFA harder than Trials and Tribulations. But yeah, with Trials and Tribulations, even now, I game overed on like 3 of the cases. With my recent playthrough of JFA, I didn't have a single game over. I don't know what it is. I mean, I got very close. With the Turnabout Big Top and Farewell My Turnabout, I was at like a 1 HP, just constantly. I was on the verge of gaming over, but Trials and Tribulations, man, I don't know what it is. It's just too tough. But that's a personal thing. Apollo Justice, this is another tough one. No, it's probably easy. Apollo Justice is definitely the OG Trilogy gameplay toned down in difficulty, and I think it does it in a good way. It doesn't really feel cheap. Like, Trials and Tribulations was definitely more fair than JFA, but I still think it has some of those cheap moments. Apollo Justice is fair for the most part. Case 1 and 2 are straightforward. Case 3 can be a little difficult. I think that's probably the hardest case. And with Case 4, the trial sections are easy, except the bracelet, the perceived section with Kristoff. That is a challenge, and I don't think it's challenging in a good way. I don't like that challenge. But that and the Mason system, so those are the challenges of Case 4. And those are, again, just navigation. It's not really the trial. It's not really what I was looking for with the contradictions. It just stalls your time. It's, it's a pace breaker in a way, but we'll get through that in the Apollo Justice reviews. We're not going to talk about that right now. Next up, we have Dual Destinies, and Dual Destinies is easy as well. I will say a lot of people say this game is like super easy. It's easy to a point where they don't lose like any health, and I'm just like, okay, whoa, calm down, calm down. This might be embarrassing to admit, but I game overed in the first case, Turnabout Countdown, but that was the hardest case for me. That was the hardest case in the game. I don't know what it was. It was just like the 5 penalties, so I barely game over, but it's still a game over. However, the rest of the cases aren't too bad. Case 2 is super easy. I didn't lose a single health point there. And then yeah, Case 3 is easy. Case 4 is easy. Case 5, I was close to a game over, but I didn't get a game over. So yeah, it wasn't too bad. I was only on the verge of game overing at the end. So yeah, it's not horrible. It's easy for the most part. I'm not the best at these games, so yeah, I guess a lot of people just find that one way easier than I do. But yeah, I don't think a 4-year-old could do it. A lot of you probably do, but yeah, not me. And Spirit of Justice is tough. Yeah, they really grinded up the difficulty with Spirit of Justice. I think Case 1 and 2 are really easy. Those don't have difficult points, but Case 3 and onwards, yeah, that gets tough. I think a lot of the divination seances can be tricky, and Case 4, I don't know what it was, but that was the hardest case in the game for me. I can't quite pinpoint what it was. I don't remember quite well, but I had trouble with that one. So Spirit of Justice, I'm going to put in hard. I don't know. A lot of those cases at the end really tested me. It's an easy start, but once you get to the third case, oh boy. And next up, we have an interesting one to talk about. The first Great Ace Attorney, Adventures. Adventures is interesting because it is like super easy. It is a 4-year-old could do this. Literally, I think a 4-year-old could play the first 4 cases of Adventures, because it is the most linear gameplay I've ever seen. A lot of it is just pressing one button, and a lot of the clues are just spelled out for you. It's very easy, but then you get to that final case and you get this huge leap in difficulty. I don't know, that 5th case, man, I don't know if it's just me. That 5th case was tough. I spent a lot of time on that case just thinking about the contradictions and stuff, so I would not put that in the bottom tier. In fact, I think it's harder than both of these games just because of that 5th case. Unspeakable Story is no joke. There's some tricky contradictions there. It's hard to say what I think I'd still put in easy though. Again, those first 4 cases, man, Those are some of the easiest cases in the series. It's just, there's so many hints. It's like you don't have to think about it that much, right? And like even in cases like the Clouded Kokoro, a lot of the hints are just constantly repeated. Like I remember the whole thing about the window being open. Like that's super easy, right? There's like a fire, but it gets so long for them to actually get to why the window's open, and they talk about it so many times to the point where your brain's just like, okay, yeah, this is very easy to understand. They keep repeating this point and we already know there's a fire, you know? It's just, I don't know, it's very simple. But that last case, man, that last case. And then we have the Great Ace Attorney 2, which is a huge bump in difficulty. I game overed in every case in this game, including the first one, man. That first case is a challenge. I honestly think that's the hardest one. Well, actually, no, I think the 5th case is the hardest, but in a bad way. I don't like the first contradiction in the 5th case. But in terms of just like good challenging gameplay, I don't know what it is, man. That first case really threw me for a loop. I was getting a lot of the questions wrong. But yeah, every case in this game just challenged me. So I don't know. I thought the difficulty was really good. There were definitely some cheap moments. You know, I will do my review series. You'll see what I'm talking about. But still, a lot of good stuff. You know, it didn't feel as unfair as JFA and Trials and Tribulations. This one definitely felt very fair. It's just challenging. It's just really hard. Well, Trials and Tribulations, I don't want to say that's unfair. I think Trials and Tribulations is mostly fair as well. So I don't want to give Trials and Tribulations negative credit there. Mostly JFA. That's mostly aimed towards JFA. But Great Ace Attorney 2 is solid. Next up, we have Investigations 1. This one's interesting. I'll put it at normal, but it is interesting with the investigation games because Edgeworth spells out a lot of the hints for you. It's quite interesting. Like, I didn't realize that on my first playthrough as much, but you get so much benefits. Think about it. You get 10 health points. You get recoveries, right? Your health points are recovered like whenever you're done a deduction segment. And Edgeworth is just your guide. The man tells you what to do for a lot of the cross-examinations. So, yeah. But you might be wondering, okay, why is it not in this bottom tier then? Well, that's mostly because of the Kidnap Turnabout and Turnabout Ablaze. With the Kidnap Turnabout, I kid you not, it's just like this one part. But this one part has such a bad contradiction. It's so bad, it's so weird, okay? Because this is where Edgeworth actually works against you. This man gives you a hint about something, but the contradiction is about something else entirely, and it's so weird. I feel like it was a mistake. I got like 2 game overs on that part, and other than that, the Kidnap Turnabout is actually really easy. It's just that one part. But then we got the big Turnabout Ablaze, and Turnabout Ablaze is actually quite tricky, even with a lot of Edgeworth's hints. That one has a lot of tough logic, so that one is that one's fair play. Like, that one's just a difficult case, and unlike Adventures, the other cases in Investigations 1 do have some difficulty to offer, so I think normal is a good place for this game. And then we have Investigations 2, and okay, obviously this bottom tier is an exaggeration. I don't think a 4-year-old could play this game, but I think it's the easiest game by far. And again, it's what I talked about earlier. Edgeworth spells everything out for you. I mean, like, literally, this guy is my guide. And on top of that, the extra benefits, you have 10 health, you have health recoveries. It's just very easy to get through. I did not game over one single time, and in fact, I was never close. I was never close to gaming over, and that's the only game out of all of these that I can say that's true. With every other game, I've game overed, or I was at least very close to having a game over. With Investigations 2, not even close, man. I think there's only one point where I got to less than half health, and I was still at like, I think 4 points of health, maybe even 5 points of health. It's just the way that health is distributed, the amount of hints you're given. It makes it much easier to get through compared to the other games. And this game doesn't really have a case as difficult as Turnabout Ablaze. So that's why it is probably the easiest game for me. And then we got PL versus AA. And I am only going to be ranking the trials. If I'm ranking the puzzles, I think the puzzles are like very easy. For a Layton game, these puzzles are pretty simple to crack. But I am only going to go on the Ace Attorney side here. So I'm going to judge it on the trials. And the trials are interesting. The first trial is very easy. that is just your tutorial. The second case has some BS in it. I'll talk about that when I get to my review, obviously, but it also has some like good parts. But overall, if we're just talking about the logic, it's easy. The third case, again, it's mostly easy. It does have a few parts here and there that are like kind of tough, but it's mostly the final case where things get difficult. The final case is really tough. It had some contradictions where I was like, I have no idea what to do here. I also tried to play this game without hints, just to make it, you know, even with all the other games. I didn't use any hints for the other games. I really couldn't. They didn't have a hint system. So that's what I did for this as well. I made sure I didn't use hints to compare it to the other games, and I'd say it's in the top of normal. Again, just for that final case, man. That final case, it has a lot of tricky spots. I don't know what it was. I'm sure I'll tell you guys when I get to my reviews, but yeah, man, that final trial, it goes on for so long as well. It is definitely the hard point of that game. But other than that, the second and third cases are not too bad, and the first case is very easy. So normal difficulty suits this game well. And yeah, that's about it. This is my ranking of Ace Attorney games and their difficulty. So yeah, comment your list down below. I'm interested to see what games you guys have as the hardest and what you have as the easiest. And yeah, I'll see you guys later.